Welcome back to Jobless Reincarnation. Why did I say it like that? Anyway, this is part 2 of the second arc, and there's links in the description if you need them. We ended with Rudy and Eris getting back after a little light kidnapping, so we're picking up from there with the aftermath. You did yourself proud yesterday, Rudius. No, I should be apologizing. Still, I don't understand. I know why they abducted Eris, but why me as well? There are many uses for a member of the Grey Rat bloodline, both politically and physically. By the way, I'm assuming you understand. Under no circumstances, yes, I understand. Ghislaine did it all, right? Grey Rats and politics, there's no way that'll come back up. I mean, we already know that Soros is the lord of the region, so we know that the Grey Rats have some political power, but we're getting hints here that there is more to it. Because of that, Philip thinks that it is best to not rock the boat. So he wants to keep it a secret that Rudy is a Grey Rat. It can look bad if Philip is bringing in more Grey Rats, especially one that's as strong as Rudy, almost like he's consolidating power to use against others. And we all know how nobles love it when their power and authority is threatened. This is all just a long, drawn-out way of saying that Rudy won't get any credit because it would be a bad political move. And conversely, it's a good political move to show off your king-class swords woman. So Ghislaine gets all the credit. In the anime, we get introduced to Hilda, who is Philip's wife. She doesn't say anything, and she comes off as cold to Rudius. She doesn't even show up in the light novel here, so there's really not a whole lot to say. Is Paul's son here? Pleased to meet you. I'm Rudius Greyrat. You're polite for Paul's boy. You may stay here. We've already met Soros in the light novel, but this is the first time that Rudy meets him in the anime. And he is a lot nicer here than in the light novel. Of course, that was before Rudy learned about the magic bowing thing that nobles are supposed to do. Soros just yelled at Rudy for being impolite and then shit talks him for being ignorant before finally accepting that he did his best and lets him stay. But that was all earlier in the light novel. I heard you saved Eris. Oh, no, Ghislaine was the one. You think you can lie to me? No, sir. Lord Philip told me... Philip? Soros doesn't hesitate. He punches Philip out of the chair and sends him flying backwards. This is the boy who saved your daughter. How dare you not offer even a word of gratitude, just so you can partake in your foolish theater between nobles? Father Paul may have been disowned by our family, but he is still a Grey Rat. So rather than outwardly praise and reward him, I thought the best way to thank him was to treat him with kindness as part of our family. Very well. Go ahead and keep up that farce with the nobles. This is the light novel version, but the anime is pretty much the same. I just like this version a little better because I think it's more clear that Soros understands the politics that's going on. This scene also shows where Eris gets her attitude from. Like I said before, her grandpa is one of the few people that she looks up to, and she copies his behavior. Like being loud and quick to use violence and not apologizing. Rudius, I have a request. Teach Eris magic. She says she can't get those spells you cast out of her head. I think Lady Eris ought to ask me herself. What if she grows up to be too proud to ask for what she wants politely? Oh, you make a fair point. Eris! Grandfather, did you talk to him? Eris, if you want to ask for something, ask for it yourself. But you said you would ask him for me. Enough. If you won't ask him yourself, then we won't hire him. Wait, no. That would be problematic for me. But I guess this is what you'd call reaping what you sow. Please? Is that any way to ask for something? Please teach Eris magic, nya? Huh? Oh, our Eris is so cute. Of course he'll do it. Isn't that right, Rudius? You have to stick your hips out more. The masters are fond of beeskin. That pose is to imitate the drooping ears. Is that any way to ask for something? I took a few lines that are only in the light novel, but for the most part, both versions are the same. According to the light novel, Rudy then spends hours convincing them to drop this custom, which Ghislaine is happy about. I would assume that Eris is also happy about, but she also uses it again later on, so who knows. This butler is named Alphonse, and I don't think he's really important to the story, but he does show back up again later, so I figured I'd throw in his name here. Rudy has officially been hired. He is going to teach Eris and Ghislaine reading, writing, math, and magic. As a 7-year-old. We jump ahead a month and we see how the tutoring has been going. Ghislaine happily sits and learns. Eris, on the other hand, gets bored pretty quick. Look, Rudius. One day I'll make huge fireworks like you do. Hey, what are you doing? Rudy puts out the fire and Eris runs off. This was the normal song and dance. Eris was happy to show up during magic and sword practice, but as soon as the reading, writing, and math lessons start, she'd run away. If I try to catch her, she punches me, and then runs. I tried going to Philip. Making your students attend your lessons is also part of your job as a home tutor. And so Rudy goes on a search for Eris. Couple of differences. So the light novel doesn't mention Ghislaine learning. I mean, it does mention that she was a part of the lessons, but not much else other than that. The anime actually shows her learning and enjoying it. She wanted those lessons, and as a nerd, it's nice to see someone being excited about learning. The conversation with Philip is light novel only, and it's not that important, but I do think it adds a little bit of reason as to why he keeps searching for Eris, even though she keeps punching him every time he does. Rudy eventually finds her in a barn, asleep on some hay. She looks like an angel when she's sleeping. No, I can't be deceived by appearances. She was the devil incarnate and would punch you until you vomited blood. Eris, wake up or you're going to get assaulted. Rudy reaches in and feels her chest. She's still a double A, but with diligence, she could become an E or bigger. Yeah, I'm not going to defend this. I did say that I don't want to get too deep into the controversial stuff, but I do understand why some people don't like or even hate the story because of stuff like this. So let's go ahead and make it worse. When he notices that she's still sound asleep, he slips his hand under her skirt. Bad girls can't complain if someone takes off their panties. Please don't do this. Any of this, regardless of age. Her eyes pop open and she sees Rudius's actions. He jumps back and blocks his face as her punch nails him in the stomach. A kick knocks him to the ground, and she storms off. This is all pretty much the same in both versions. Rudy tries to take her clothes off and she knocks him the fuck out. It's hopeless. I'll ask Ghislaine for help. She must know something about managing Eris. He fake cries in both versions to try to convince her to help, but the light novel is more clear that he's just using water magic to fake the tears. They didn't really come up with a plan. Like, the entire plan was just to let her explain why she wants to learn. In the anime, he at least gives a signal, but in the light novel, it seems like it's just all up to her on what she says and when she says it. I feel like it's a bit risky for Rudy to not even know what she's going to say, but I'm also starting to notice that Rudy's plans tend to have a lot of improvising. The next time that Eris starts to get bored with learning, Ghislaine tells her a story. I used to think that the sword was all I needed. My party, the Fangs of the Black Wolf, had 6 members. 2 swordsmen, a fighter, and a thief, plus 1 mage and 1 cleric. This is the group that Paul and Zenith were in about 7 years ago. The light novel goes into more detail, but I'm just going to talk about one thing right now. A swordsman is more of a title. You are a swordsman if you use a sword and use one of the 3 sword styles. Otherwise, you're a fighter or a warrior or some other word. So if you don't use a sword, then you wouldn't be considered a swordsman, which kind of makes sense. But if you use the sword and you use some other technique other than the 3 sword styles, then you still wouldn't be considered a swordsman. I let the others handle buying and managing the supplies. So have you ever been in trouble because you couldn't do math? Yeah, loads of it. After Paul and Zenith got married, I traveled alone, but I couldn't calculate money. I went 10 days without food or drink. I couldn't bear it, and I ate monster shit, but it gave me the runs. While I endured nausea, stomachache, and diarrhea, monsters swarmed around me. That's why I want to learn math. I'm counting on you. Rudius is disgusted by the story, but it somehow does the job. Eris is now motivated to learn. This is what happens from now on. Anytime that Eris gets bored with learning, Ghislaine tells a story about adventuring, and then she's good to go. Alright, let's talk about what was cut out of the anime. Ghislaine's story is actually two different stories that were combined into one for the anime, and most of the info from the first story was actually cut out. We learn about the thief of the Black Wolf group, and we don't get his name just yet, so I'll hold off on that. And it's thief as in the class name, not an actual thief. Well, thieves tend to be thieves. He would steal their money and then go gamble it, but normally he would come back with more money than he took, so the group didn't make a big deal about it. And this is all coming from Ghislaine, who couldn't do math, so I don't know how true it is. I'm assuming that since no one else made a big deal about it, then it probably is true. And it's another reason to learn math. A knight is someone who is appointed by the king or someone high up, and they're typically nobles. Rudy says that Paul is a knight, but Ghislaine doesn't know if he was or wasn't at the time that they were adventuring together, because he only ever called himself a swordsman. Which brings us to another point. Rudy asked if anyone calls themselves a magic warrior or a magic knight. And Ghislaine says, yeah, sure. People can call themselves whatever they want. There's no rule that says you have to call yourself your actual class. I mean, yeah, sure, some people may get upset if you call yourself a mage and you can't cast magic, but who cares? Rudy and Eris train with the sword, but it's apparent who is better. You've got a long way to go, Rudius. Don't get conceited. You've been learning the sword longer, and you're older. But Rudius, your movements get sluggish whenever you're being attacked. I get scared when someone's in my face and seriously attacking. What? That's pathetic. No, Rudius is a mage. He's better off that way. Oh, really? I guess it can't be helped then. Sorry, but I don't know how to fix your legs freezing. Fix that yourself. Both versions show Ghislaine as a pretty good teacher. She's constantly pointing out what they are doing right and wrong, and what they should be doing next. That combined with practicing with Eris, who is more on his level, actually helps Rudius grow more than when he was with Paul. Paul was both far better than him and shit at explaining what to do. So Rudy just ended up getting his ass kicked with no way to tell what he was doing wrong. So this setup is far better for him. Ghislaine goes a step further in the light novel. She says that Paul is the instinctive type, which is why he's bad at trying to explain things. Ghislaine used to be that way too, but she didn't become a king-class swordsman until she started using her head more. And I think part of the reason that she explains this is because Eris is the same way. She's very good on instinct alone, but if she learns to rely on that instinct, then she'll hit a ceiling and will stop improving. Ghislaine wants to prevent that before it happens. Or maybe she just threw it out there and it's really not that deep. The light novel has an extra scene here. Rudy goes to the library with Philip. He's looking for a grimoire so that he can learn more magic, but he doesn't find one, so he just gets some history books instead. He does end up going to the library again later, so I'm assuming the anime just decided to cut this since it doesn't really add much. In the light novel, this is where he meets Hilda. The anime moved this event to earlier. It's another thing that doesn't really change much. Half a year passes. Eris, who I thought had finally cooled down, began to return to her violent ways. Why? How? Who did this? I panicked until I realized something. She had been given no breaks. I went with the light novel wording since it adds a time frame, but the anime is the same. They managed to get Eris to learn for a little while, but at this point she is basically going to school from after breakfast to before dinner every single day. So I can completely understand that getting old. Rudy comes up with a solution. She'll be given 1 day off a week. The anime just states this after the fact and skips over all the work that Rudy puts in to actually make it happen. So in the light novel, we learn they have days and months, but not weeks. So for them, it doesn't really make sense to have any days off per week. Luckily, 7 is seen similar to what it is in our world, so it doesn't take a whole lot of convincing to get everyone on board with the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule for Eris. First off, he goes to Philip to make sure all of this is okay. We don't get the exact conversation, but according to Rudy, Philip is more concerned about the results. As long as she is learning, he doesn't really care about the exact time in the classroom. After that, Rudy gets Ghislaine and Edna together for a little teachers' meeting. Rudy is teaching reading, writing, math, and magic. Ghislaine is teaching swordsmanship, Edna is teaching etiquette, and occasionally Philip is teaching history. Since they are losing a day each week, Rudy proposes a new schedule so that they each have the appropriate amount of time to teach their lessons. And I'm not going to go over the details. Actually, yeah, I am. Because I can make a stupid graph out of it. All right. Rudy breaks this up into 6 days, 3 periods per day separated by food breaks. I say that Rudy did this, but it's actually how it currently works. Rudy just threw in labels to make it a little easier to schedule the lessons. Swordsmanship gets time every day. Etiquette gets 5 times a week. Magic gets 3. Reading and writing are combined and get 2 slots. Math is the last and gets the last 2. I'm not completely sure on the time for everything, but I'm guessing the schedule looks something like this. Thank you for indulging me in that complete waste of time. With this new schedule, Rudy now has days off, something that I imagine most people don't have. I mean, Gawain doesn't really know what a day off is, and I'm assuming that's the norm for most people. And this is a decent stopping point. Rudy is settling into his new job and seems to be doing pretty well at it. So next time we'll see what he decides to do with his newfound free time. See ya.